Welcome everybody to For the Love of Language. I'm EJ.
I'm Stacy. We're in a goofy, silly mood today.
We are, and we're going to talk about idioms, which can be a fantastic topic to bring in a little bit of humor and light. So we're
Yeah,
going to go for it.
it's perfect. It's perfect for our goofy, silly mood because idioms are goofy and silly.
Yeah, idioms are fantastic. I think Stacey's mentioned multiple times that one of her favorite things in linguistics is phonology, all of the sound awesomeness. I love phonology, but what does it for me is pragmatics. And that's what idioms are, is just pure pragmatics, and I love it.
Yep. So idioms, for those who maybe your ninth grade English class is kind of like skipping your brain a little bit. You don't quite remember exactly what idioms are. Look, I forget about this stuff too. An idiom is a phrase or expression that's usually figurative. It's not literal, but there is like a meaning attached to it. So a very obvious example is it's raining cats and dogs. It is not actually raining fluffy little creatures from the sky. It just means that it's raining a lot, but we use sort of this like figurative imaginary scenario to describe that phenomenon.
Yeah. And I really like thinking about them as metaphors, like as the common metaphors of a language.
Yeah.
Because I think it's these symbolic phrases that people have used so much that they actually sometimes forget the symbology of it. So
Yeah.
like if you were to say, I think a common one is kill two birds with one stone. If I say that in a work meeting and I'm like, hey, let's just kill two birds with one stone, let's do this and this at the same time by doing this, no one is thinking about getting out their slingshot with a rock and shooting two birds out of the sky. Like that
Yeah.
image doesn't even go through people's minds
Yeah.
because the phrase itself has just generated its own direct meaning in people's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's really interesting about these, and something that I kind of wanted to touch on since we're already kind of going there is these phrases, when you take them kind of like in isolation, like killing two birds with one stone, raining cats and dogs, breaking the leg, or something like that. When you like look at these in isolation, you're like, okay, that's like a weird way to say it. But when they're in context, there's a little bit of that makes more sense. But when you introduce these kinds of things to children, they don't have this context. They're brand new in the world. So if you tell them it's raining cats and dogs, they're going to be like, okay, well, I know what cats and dogs are and I know what rain is. Why would dogs and cats be falling from the sky? Right. Mm-hmm. So they have to learn a new context. And what's interesting about this is when it comes to idioms, these are one of those things that are like rote memorization. Like most of language is like generating and creating patterns and like using generalizations to make something new. But stuff like idioms, these are so, because they have like a one-to-one mapping and they are like context dependent, these are one of those few elements of linguistics that you just have to memorize it. Like there's no way of getting around it. Like to say that it's raining cats and dogs and understand that it's just raining heavily, that requires just pure memorization.
Yeah, I think in one of our previous episodes, I mentioned that one of the interesting things about my idiolect growing up, like this language specific to me, is that growing up in international schools with people who had a bunch of different native languages, we actually tended to avoid idioms. And so when I went to college, my first year or two in the US in a university dorm was when I picked up a ton of new idioms that I had never heard before. And that'll also happen if you're like maybe moving between regions and maybe there's an idiom in a dialect that is not a part of your dialect and you have to learn. Or maybe if you're learning a new language, they'll have different idioms. So it's really interesting how they come up, but there's also some that are just so common that people like don't even think about them as idioms anymore.
Yeah, yeah. No, when I was teaching English to adults and stuff, this is something that my students would come to me with, because I every Monday I would have question Mondays where it was just, let's just answer whatever questions you have, like about anything, about culture, about, the geography, like whatever it is you have questions about, let's talk about it. And they would often come to me with idioms and ask me like, what does this mean? I heard someone use it, but I don't understand. And so we'd talk about like the idiom and, what the idea is behind it. If we had a chance, we could talk about kind of where it came from.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things. And this is the stuff that I would have to tell my students, like, this is something you just got to memorize. You just got to learn, because most of the time it will not make any goddamn sense.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. There's some phrases that are very set, iconic phrases that I wouldn't necessarily think of as idioms. And then there's others that I would. So, for example, if someone says, knock on wood. So, to explain the meaning of this for anyone who is maybe not a native English speaker, if I talk about something that I don't want to happen, like, oh, we don't want to get in a car crash right before we're about to go on a road trip, it's really common for someone to say knock on wood as a superstitious thing for good luck. But then someone will literally go and knock on wood a lot of the time because we're actually more superstitious than we like to admit.
Oh, yeah.
So... But I don't think of that as an idiom because you are literally knocking on wood, but it is a very set phrase. And I think there's other instances when we have things like that. Maybe there's other metaphors that we might express in multiple ways that you wouldn't necessarily consider the idiom. I don't know. I'm just trying to I'm trying to illustrate that maybe there is a little bit of gray area in the definition or phrases that would be interesting to say, is this actually an idiom or is it not?
Yeah. So I think what we got to kind of delineate here is idioms specifically and just formulaic language. Because in language, there are a lot of things that we're just going to say a lot of different times, or we're going to say something for a given context, like when you walk and see someone down the street, you say, hello, or how you doing? And you don't necessarily want a complete answer of like, how are you doing? It's just more of like another way to say hi, right? That's not an idiom. That's just formulaic language. That's just kind of like a pattern. Yeah, so formulaic language is just kind of stuff that we repeat over and over and over again. And because we have sort of a repetition around it, it becomes, it's something that is kind of just like automatic. And so the difference between this like formulaic language, that would be like knock on wood, right? That is something that you say in response to something else. And it's not like... It's something more out of habit, because you do want someone to knock on the wood literally, as opposed to an idiom, which is like purely figurative. Like this is not something that you expect to happen literally. Killing the two birds with one stone, that is not what you intend at all. Whereas with knock on wood, you're like, yeah, go ahead and knock on the wood for good luck.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference. And that's kind of where idioms are like a branch of this formulaic language. Like, yes, it is something you just memorize and do, but it's also purely fictive.
Yeah, that was a fantastic description. I don't think I have anything else to say about that. But I do have a few other things, little tangents I want to dive into with
Let's
idioms.
Go. Yeah.
But let's just start with a fun one. Do you have a favorite idiom?
Yeah. I mean, there is probably, there's so many. Oh my goodness. I don't know that I have a specific idiom that I really like, but there is other formulaic language that I enjoy. Yeah. I use idioms a lot, but I think I prefer other like formulaic language.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I can't say that I have a favorite idiom. Do you? Since you asked the question?
There's like a few that came to mind when I was thinking about this. There's a Spanish one that means to contemplate the immortality of the crab,
Okay.
which I think is a kind of fun one. I also like shoot the breeze.
Oh yeah.
I think if someone says, let's shoot the breeze, it just means, let's just, talk. There doesn't have to be a purpose to the conversation, but,
Yeah.
let's just chat for fun.
Oh,
No one's actually,
I
were
did
you
think of
thinking
one.
about firing a rifle into the
Oh, no,
wind when I
no.
said that? Okay,
No, no,
that's what I
no.
was going to say.
No, I was gonna say as you were bringing those up, okay, one did come to mind, and this is I don't even know if this is an old one, but it's one that is in like pop culture quite a bit now, and like vines and memes and stuff. It's colder than a witch's tit.
Okay.
It's
I
colder than
can't
a
say
witch's
that's a
tit out
normal one
there.
that I hear around, but that's fantastic.
It's one that often gets replayed in my brain when I'm feeling a little crazy.
Mm.
And it doesn't even have to be cold. It's just sometimes it's because I think it's from like a vine or something. It's colder than a witch's tit out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
Yeah.
think another couple that kind of stood out to me when I was thinking about this, water under the bridge is one that you hear a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
when it's like, oh, it's just water under the bridge. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe something happened that was negative, but we don't really need to think about it. Just let it go, move on.
Similarly, you can burn your bridges.
You can burn your bridges. Yeah, burn the ships. Might harken back to a bit more of a historical event, but I think that's also sort of an idiom now.
Burn your ships.
Yeah, burn the ships is something that a lot of people will say when it's like, move forward without giving yourself a backup plan to fall onto. Like we're fully committed to
Oh,
this. Let's burn the ships.
I haven't heard that one before. That's interesting.
Yeah. Another one that I actually hear a lot is speak of the devil,
Oh, yeah.
which is like you're talking about someone and then they enter the room and you're like, speak of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. There's a lot of fun ones.
Oh yeah, no, idioms are great and you'll find them like all over the place. Like just
Mm-hmm.
because I'm having a hard time generating some of my favorite ones, I'm sure that they crop up every single day and I just don't even notice it. Because that's kind of how formulaic language is it's not until you like really dissect it or think about it or go through and like are consciously aware of it that you're like, oh wow, that's kind of strange, that's kind of odd. Like
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was just so natural. But that's the beauty of formulaic language is it just happens.
Right. Yeah. Super interesting. So
Yeah.
another point that I want to dive into a little bit is idioms and translation. Because I
Yeah,
think
let's
this is one that gets
go.
really interesting because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that are like, well, in my language, we say this.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had so many times when people say that, and it's like, oh, yeah, we have the exact same idiom in my language as well. I Googled just like a list of Spanish idioms. And one of the ones that came up was ver todo color de rosa, which is like see everything in the color pink, which
Ah,
sounds a
yes.
lot like you seeing
Looking at
everything
the
through
world through
rose-colored
rose-colored glasses.
glasses.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many, like some of them are even closer than that.
Yeah.
But I think there's also some that are drastically different between languages, but there's a lot that are the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this is like a really interesting phenomena, and it kind of harkens back to other elements, other like cultural elements that we see like all over the world, right? Like we talked a little bit about like language myths. Some like we talked about how different cultures all have a mythos about like a giant flood or about some sort of like creation or some sort of like afterlife. Like there are kind of these like larger common themes, and idioms kind of seem like they might be similar in that way, or they might come from like similar roots,
Mm-hmm.
but like linguistically they're just phrased a little bit differently. And so there's no obvious explanation for why you might have idioms that are the same. I say the same, but like similar enough cross linguistically, other than they might have similar origins,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just like a common enough theme, a common enough mythos, kind of like a giant flood, that it was just bound to kind of occur in a language because this is just something that humans kind of experience
Yeah,
worldwide.
definitely. So I think, yeah, like you mentioned, there might be historical, linguistic historically linguistic. How do you change that into an adverb?
Uh,
Anyway.
yeah. You did great.
um
We're moving on.
we're moving on. So there might be historical reasons for like these idioms to be shared, and then there's like these universal experiences that could lead to the idioms generating in a very similar way independently, which would be more similar to like the words dada and mama being super
Mhm.
similar across multiple languages, even though there's not necessarily a historical root for that.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that there are a number of linguists out there who look into this kind of stuff and who
Mm-hmm.
are working specifically on kind of like finding out the connections between like idiomatic phrases cross linguistically, and why it might be the case that we see these idioms cross culturally even, right? Or
Yeah.
similar themes. So it's more the work, I think, of sociolinguists and linguistic anthropologists who do this
Which
kind
is
of work.
fun. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
the stuff I think is fantastic. Like if you're interested in learning another language, I think it's super fun to just look up a bunch of their idioms.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they're just really cool.
Oh yeah, they're really great. Some of the like once upon a time when I was taking French classes, we would have vocabulary sheets for like certain celebratory days like Valentine's Day, and learning the different like pet names that you use in different languages is also like a fun thing. So in
Mm.
in English you'll say my darling, my dear, sweetheart, baby, but in French you could call someone mon loup and call them your wolf, which I think is just very like vicious and romantic, very dashing,
Oh
right?
my gosh, I love that.
I know. I was like, I've been trying to incorporate that. I actually did date a guy for a while whose nickname was Wolf. His name was Wolfgang. And so I like tried to incorporate it sometimes because I was like, oh, that's kind of spicy, but it's
That's
it's
awesome.
different. But yeah, looking at those kinds of things, because even little stuff like that might change cross
Hmm.
culturally.
Yeah,
It's really fun. Anyway,
so cool.
tangent aside.
Well, I just have another tangent to dive
Yeah,
into.
let's
This is kind
go.
of like the last thing I was thinking about when it comes to idioms. There's a Venn diagram in my head. This is probably like the nerdiest way to explain what
I
I'm
love it. No,
thinking,
I'm here for it.
but
Let's go.
there's a Venn diagram in my head between idioms and euphemisms, and I think the
Okay.
crossover point is actually rather large, and I think that there's a reason for that. And this is purely my conjecture. I haven't like read any studies on this or anything, but it seems like if you had things that people are reluctant to talk about directly, that
Mm-hmm.
situation lends itself very easily to both idioms speaking around it and euphemisms, which might actually be idioms. So a euphemism is when you don't want to say something directly, instead you use a more polite form of it. So really common
Yes.
examples might be for someone dying. You don't commonly just say he died. Usually you'll say he passed away,
Mm-hmm.
or
He's in a
the
better
dog.
place.
Right, the dog crossed the rainbow bridge. Like
Yeah.
there's an entire Monty Python skit that's like multiple minutes of them just explaining that a parrot died using different idioms.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's an iconic one.
Right. I think it's on YouTube. If you just search up like Monty Python dead parrot, it'll probably come up.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really, really interesting thing. Like if you were to think of these more negative idioms, would you be able to think of more of them than for just like, I don't know, think about someone had a bad day versus someone had a good day. To say someone is
Mm-hmm.
having a bad day, you could say, oh yeah, they got out of the wrong side of the bed, or the day got off to the wrong foot, or I probably said that one wrong.
Yeah,
But
they
like,
started the day on the wrong foot. Yeah.
yes, right. And think about like, okay, what would I say if it was a good day? I don't know. It's a good day.
You can say you woke up on the right side of the bed.
Yeah, but that's like flipping it. I don't think it's as common. I mean, you could say like sunshine
I've
and
heard it.
roses. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that almost
Um,
sounds sarcastic?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or if someone's
Yeah.
crazy, I think that's a really good one. You'll say like,
Okay.
"Oh, they're off their rocker," or they're a few fries short of a happy meal. Like there's all of these phrases for someone like not quite being sane or like top-notch intelligent.
Yeah, they're not the sharpest tool in the shed, the sharpest knife in the drawer. Oh, I see.
But you don't say the opposite of that. You don't say they're the sharp knife in the drawer.
No, you would say they're quick as a whip.
Right. There are others on the other side of it.
Yeah. You'd say they're quick as a whip, they're sharp as a tack. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. No, I hadn't. There is a bit of overlap now that you mention it. I'm seeing this Venn diagram inside of your noggin.
Right. And like I said, it's totally unscientific. I don't have any numbers for it, but I think there is an interesting intersection there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I can definitely understand why. Like it's easier to, if you are going to try and cover up something that's maybe a little bit dirty, or using something that's more figurative is definitely a better way of doing that. So it makes sense that the two would be connected. I'm really kind of interested in that now. I wonder if someone has done some research on that. They probably have, but it might be worth like looking into as to like the extent of that overlap. Could be really interesting. Right.
Yeah. I might try and look into that.
Yeah.
But
we'll co-write a paper, EJ. It'll be great.
Right. I'll just I'll think about that one. I don't know if I want to commit there. That's it's a lot of effort.
You don't want to run some statistical analyses on the extent to which euphemisms and idioms overlap?
If you want me to write a Python script, I'm totally down for it.
Yeah.
And I actually find that stuff fascinating. It's just that there's so many other things I want to spend time on in my life. But like, I could totally see myself going into linguistics research more at some point in the future.
Yeah. I mean, what's great about linguistics research, this is a completely different tangent. What's great about research like this is you don't necessarily have to be within academia to publish on this kind of thing.
Yeah. You don't need an IRB or anything if you're not working with humans. Like if you're just working with open source data on the internet or books or things, you could just run the stuff on your own and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know plenty of people, especially within the realms of computational linguistics, who have published independently outside of academia because like linguistics is so broad that you don't necessarily you don't have to be in a formal lab of any sort, right? It's not like it's not like chemistry where you have to have access to all of these like super restricted chemicals and all of this fancy shit. Like, no, linguistics is so much more chill, I guess, in the fact that you can completely do it by yourself and publish something worthwhile, which is really interesting.
Wow.
Anyway,
we might have to talk more if there is something we do want to collab on that way, because that could be interesting. But
we'll let our lovely listeners know if we ever publish a paper together.
Right, we definitely will, but there's nothing in the plans at the moment. But yeah, I have a few books of idioms. I have a thesaurus of English idioms that is this massive tome.
Oh my god, y'all can't see it, but it looks to be a good 300 to 500 pages.
Oh no, this is 1,248 pages.
Oh, they're thin pages. They're really thin pages. Oh, good God.
It's a thick book.
That's a thick book.
There's some cool resources. And then Barron's foreign language guides. I have theirs for Spanish and English idioms and German and English idioms. And that's really cool if you want to maybe be able to understand something. They don't have every idiom in them, obviously, but it's a really good resource, and you'll get more from books like that than you will from the list of 50 or 100 idioms on a Google search or something like that.
Yeah, and those books like that are also slightly more resourceful than people, because like we've said, these are so buried into our brains that if you ask people, EJ asked me, hey, what's your favorite idiom? I had to think, and I was like, I don't know, but I apparently do have a favorite idiom. It's just, it takes a while for people to generate these kinds of things because they're just so common. So a book like those, or books like those are definitely very helpful if you're looking into those kinds of things.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it would just be fun to talk about idioms because
Oh
they're
yeah, this has been a
so
blast.
varied and unique. And yeah, if you have a favorite idiom, definitely let us know. I'll post something on our story or on our Instagram page at For the Love of Language. Feel free to follow us there as
Yeah.
well.
And it doesn't even have to be your favorite English idiom. If you want to tell us about an idiom in your native language or a language that you are familiar with, we'd love to hear about it because some of them are so funny.
Yeah, I love idioms. Like I said, pragmatics is one of my favorite aspects of linguistics because pragmatics is where you're talking about the non-literal meaning, the actual intended meaning, and how that can deviate based on so many different factors is just
Yeah.
super fun.
Good
So
shit. Good shit. Thank you all for joining us on our lovely little dive into idioms. And please check us out on Instagram at For the Love of Language. I keep saying I'm gonna post more, and stuff keeps happening, but we do post updates there whenever we release a new episode. So keep tabs on us there, and we'll keep you updated with all the good stuff going on.
all right, till next time.
Bye.